Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Aquarian Mind podcast. Today's podcast episode number 159. I'm your host, Jamel Crothers. It's Book Insight Friday, and we're going to continue with character development. But today, I want to talk about character development in a series. The goal is always to create characters that are memorable. And writing characters in a book series, well, it has its share of challenges. And I say this because developing a story for characters has to be believable and surely relatable. You want to keep the reader as engaged as possible, and not every character will relate to the reader. But the one thing I have to be careful of is if a reader gets entrenched in one specific character, that I continue their story throughout the series to where, they stay engaged with just only that character. I kind of want people to, you know, focus on not just one character, but maybe two or three other ones. The last thing I want to do is write a story that, well, it doesn't make sense and it makes the reader lose interest. And my advice to writers and future authors is to be authentic. Write it as if you're someone who's going to pick up the book and buy it yourself. Because there's always a challenge in creating the current story, the backstory, and where the character is going in the future. So don't feel rushed to create something great. Sometimes the best stories take the most time. Depending on how long the book series is, will determine how much you have to put into your characters. Some characters will be in some books in the series, and some characters will be in all of the books. And I've written characters in both ways, where some are in all of the books and some characters are only in one or two books. It has its share of challenges, but my brainstorming sessions help things go a long way. The biggest part of developing characters in a book series is to brainstorm the whole series. Write everything down for each book. And that will keep you from, getting writer's block. Because like I said, I don't believe in writer's block. It drives me crazy when I see that on Twitter. It's how I did it for all of my book series, especially, with the World We Live In series, the Kids with Guns series, the Struggles and Growth of a Man series, the Code Blue series, the Private Investigator series. I've got plenty of series that I've written, and I'll give you some solid examples of kind of how I've done this, throughout my journey, right? Now, the Struggles and Growth of a Man series, that was a 5-book series. There were only 2 characters throughout that series, Robert and Michael. Robert was the main character. Michael really didn't come into the forefront of the series until book 3. And then from book 3 through book 5, the both of them were in the series. They were talking about their life experiences, but you knew, who was talking because I made sure that each chapter was labeled Robert or Michael or whatever the case is, right? So that's not too bad of a series. The World We Live In series had 19 different characters who faced major social issues that they're dealing with and going through. Whether it's alcohol addiction, gambling addiction, business owners, sexuality, things like that, right? So all 19 characters were in the 5-book series that I created. So their story would be a continuation from one book to the next. And that was my longest book series that I've written. So there was just no way in the world that I could write all of that in one book or 2 books or even 3. The stories had to flow. They had to make sense. And as the series progresses, the story continues and it gets better. Now with the Kids with Guns series, that's a 5-book series also. And there was 23 characters, but the difference is that there weren't really that many characters that were in every book. I would say I think there were about 4 characters that were in every book of the series out of 23, right? So the main characters who, went into the school and, shot up the school, Matthew and Max, they were in 4 of the 5 books. They weren't in the first book at all. You know of their names, but you don't hear from them until the end of book 2. You see what I'm saying? Which was planned intentionally, just to give you guys a heads up. But then people, like Lena and Charles, who were students in the school that survived the school shooting, they were in the whole series. You see what I'm saying? So it just all depends on how you go about writing a book series and making sure that these characters make sense in each book and that their story pushes it forward, right? So there's a lot of planning that goes into writing a book series. And for me, I brainstormed the whole series, especially The World We Live In, especially Kids with Guns. The World We Live In series, by the time I hit book 4, I was basically writing book 4 and book 5 at the same time. So I would just write like one character in book 4 and then finish their story in book 5. And that's kind of how I did it for the rest of the series, because that's how mentally taxing it was to write that book series. And you guys would get a full understanding of that if you kind of backtrack and listen to previous podcasts or read blogs about how I wrote that series. That was the most emotional one that I wrote. With the Kids with Guns series, it was hard. It was challenging at times to write it because there was a lot of emotions that I had to put into it. There are a lot of different characters that I had to emote and express feelings and, tell it from a certain perspective to where you can feel them, you can understand them. So not only am I talking about the students who survived the school shooting, I'm talking about a teacher who is questioning whether, he wants to be a teacher anymore. Then I'm talking about the EMT worker that's taking these, adults and children to the hospital. I'm talking about doctors, I'm talking about surgeons, I'm talking about police officer, an FBI agent, so someone from the SWAT team. So I'm talking about so many different characters. Then the trial comes, and then we're, talking about a character who's a judge and the district attorney and, the defense attorney, the parents of both of the kids who committed the heinous act. So there's a lot of storylines that I have to create, and there's a lot of storylines that have to flow, right? So just know that there are many challenges in writing these books and developing these characters. And just think, I had to think of 19 different characters' names for The World We Live In. I had to think of 23 different characters' names for another book series. And then remember, I can't utilize these characters' names in other books down the road. You have to create new names and things of that nature. And that's another challenge in itself. So just think about how much planning that I have to do in order to not only plan how I'm going to write these characters and their storylines and their backstories and all of that. Now I have to write it to where it flows, it makes sense, it sounds succinct. And I know that all of you readers and listeners, you guys are smart as ever. So you guys are going to remember something that I said in book 1 when you get to book 3 or book 4 if you're reading a series, right? So I have to make sure that everything makes perfect sense and there isn't no contradictory things that I'm writing to where it's like, wait a minute, he said this in book 1. How does this make sense in book 5? And, you have to be aware of all of that, right? So it's more challenging, I would say, to write a book series than to write a standalone. A standalone book, it's a one-shot deal. You just got to get that reader immersed right away and keep them engaged. I still keep that mindset when I'm writing a book series, and I have to make sure that people are engaged from the get-go, especially with certain characters. So I have to decide what character I'm going to utilize to be the forefront of a book series so they can carry the series. Like in the World We Live in series, Christina, the first character in the book series, she carries that book series based off of what she experienced in her life. In Kids with Guns, Alina, the student who survived the school shooting, she's the one who's the forefront of who carries the series. And then other characters such as Mark and Brittany, those three are the main characters that I want to carry the series and push it forward. So there's a lot that goes into writing these books. I know that, in previous podcasts, I've talked about, how I wrote the book and these books and things of that nature and what was in the mindset. But now I want to really break it down into, okay, this is what really happens in this writing process. And I just need you all to know, like, a lot of this is just, it's not easy. It may look like it comes naturally to me, but it doesn't. It just doesn't. I have to really meticulously plan everything from beginning to end. And I'm going to be doing something really good and fun for you guys within the next few weeks. I'm going to be doing character development with the Kids with Guns series, and I'm going to be for the next few weeks delving into each character, what went into me writing these characters, and why I incorporated them into a series that tackles school shootings and gun control in America. So stay tuned for that for the next few Fridays. It's going to be good. I promise you that. That's for sure. And if you want to get a heads up on it, there are blogs written about it. But as you know, when I jump on the podcast, a lot more comes to light. Anyway, with that said, that's my podcast for today. I thank you guys for listening. As always, I appreciate you guys so much. I want you guys to have a good weekend. Be productive. Be good, everyone, and go accomplish your goals.